DOJ and all of the agencies involved will continue to dismantle this transnational criminal organization, lock these criminals up, and keep our country safe. The drugs that you have seen today will no longer destroy lives.
4:32 a.m., Los Angeles, California. 3.4 tons of narcotics seized. $410 million laundered. Governor runs Sinaloa pipeline. 112 state officials compromised. This is the largest political cartel infiltration ever uncovered on U.S. soil. Let me show you how deep it goes.
If this isn't sending a message loud and clear to Sinaloa and these other cartels, it better be. Because they know that these men and women, all of these agencies working together, are coming after them.
4:32 a.m. Los Angeles lay buried under cold marine fog when the first flashbang split the silence. In a single heartbeat, the city's neon pulse collapsed into the roar of federal justice. DEA, FBI, and ICE strike teams hit 7 underground casinos, 11 cartel-run bars, 3 massage fronts, and 4 warehouses stretching from downtown LA to Riverside. Agents in black moved like shadows through alleys and back doors. Inside a hidden Koreatown casino, chaos erupted as slot machines exploded under the breach blast and poker chips rained like shrapnel. 5 couriers sprinted for an exit with duffel bags of cash and narcotics, only to be slammed to the pavement before escaping into the fog. Within 40 minutes, 168 suspects were down. Under a VIP chandelier, trays of blue fentanyl pills glimmered like gemstones. Agents seized $19.4 million in cash, 320 kilograms of cocaine, 1.2 tons of methamphetamine, and 840,000 fentanyl pills disguised as prescriptions, enough to level a city. But the real shock wasn't the drugs. Beneath the hardwood of a private gambling suite, agents uncovered 2 encrypted hard drives sealed in steel boxes, clues pointing not just to Sinaloa, but to something far darker inside California's own government, TAP-like. So this investigation doesn't stop here. When the encrypted steel boxes were hauled out of the Koreatown casino, no one expected them to rewrite the fate of an entire state. At 6:12 a.m., inside the FBI's Los Angeles Cyber Forensics Lab, analysts crowded around a single blinking monitor as the decryption software finally cracked the first drive. What appeared on the screen wasn't a ledger, nor a list of traffickers. It was a sprawling, meticulously engineered network diagram labeled Project Solaris. Dozens of shell companies lit up like constellations. 36 ghost corporations, 51 offshore accounts, 14 restaurant chains, and 5 non-profit foundations that existed only in paperwork. Money flowed through them with surgical precision. $410 million in disguised transfers routed across 4 countries and 3 continents. But the most explosive revelation came from the signatures embedded deep in the authorization files. Every transaction, every approval, every masked financial directive pointed to one man, Governor Alexander Alex Cortez, the sitting governor of California. His digital signature appeared on 319 classified transfers. His encrypted authorization key unlocked access to logistics hubs tied directly to the Sinaloa cartel. For years, California's top elected official had preached reform and public safety. Yet the hard drives told a different story, one where Cortez operated not as a bystander, but as the architect of the cartel's most advanced American operation. Further analysis exposed shipment logs connecting the governor's office to 112 container imports labeled as electronic supplies and industrial equipment. In reality, they carried precursor chemicals from Tijuana to Long Beach, then into California's distribution network. 27 cross-border humanitarian shipments were in fact high-volume narcotics convoys. Within the files, agents also uncovered a payouts ledger showing a corrupted enforcement network. 63 California Highway Patrol officers, 19 border agents, and multiple supervisory officials receiving monthly consultation bonuses. These weren't bribes, they were salaries. Solaris had built a second police force, one loyal only to the cartel. By 7 a.m., a chilling consensus formed inside the FBI war room. This wasn't corruption. This was command-level collusion. And Project Solaris was the governor's blueprint to turn California into Sinaloa's West Coast empire. Comment next if you want the truth to go deeper. In that instant, federal commanders issued the order no one thought would ever be spoken: wipe Solaris off the map. Every asset, air, ground, cyber, tactical, was unleashed at once. No negotiations, no warnings. This wasn't a raid anymore, it was a statewide eradication. By the following dawn, California was no longer a state waking up to news. It was a battlefield. At exactly 5 a.m., inside the Sacramento Command Center, a massive digital map flickered to life. One by one, 74 red markers pulsed across Los Angeles, San Diego, San Bernardino, Fresno, and the Central Valley. Every dot represented a node of Project Solaris, the Empire Governor Alexander Alex Cortez had built for the Sinaloa Cartel. Within seconds, orders cascaded across the room. 1,200 federal agents, 41 SWAT teams, 22 Black Hawk helicopters, 9 armored MRAPs, one unified mission: dismantle every last piece of Solaris before it vanished into smoke. The operation began with a roar over San Bernardino, where 4 Black Hawks descended onto the rooftop of a massive 60,000 square foot warehouse. Armed contractors hired by the Sinaloa Cartel opened fire the moment boots hit steel. The night erupted into a thunderstorm of muzzle flashes. Federal snipers returned fire from hovering helicopters, tracing arcs of light across the rooftop. Breach teams fast-roped down the sides of the building as sparks rained from ricocheting rounds. Inside the warehouse, agents pushed through thick chemical fumes. Rows of steel drums, mislabeled as industrial solvents, concealed nearly a ton of fentanyl precursor powder. Automatic gunfire echoed from the loading bay as cartel shooters attempted to flank the entry teams. The firefight lasted 13 relentless minutes, ending when MRAP units smashed through the east wall like a rolling steel avalanche, forcing the remaining gunmen to drop their weapons. But San Bernardino was only one battlefield. Across Los Angeles County, another strike unfolded in the hills above Malibu, where a fortress-style mansion hid a command center for Solaris. Reinforced steel doors, bullet-resistant windows, and a network of underground tunnels turned the estate into a miniature war bunker. When SWAT teams breached the front gate, 16 heavily armed guards unleashed a barrage of rifle fire from the balconies. Flashbangs burst against granite walls. Agents advanced in coordinated waves, taking cover behind stone pillars and overturned outdoor tables. Up in the sky, drones relayed thermal images of suspects fleeing into the compound's tunnel system. FBI tactical teams stormed the entry points, smoke swirling behind them as they fought through narrow corridors lined with surveillance monitors and cash-counting machines. By mid-morning, the results were staggering. 287 arrests, 3.4 tons of narcotics seized, $27.8 million in cash and gold, 202 firearms, and a hidden server farm containing the operational brain of Solaris. California's underworld had been hit harder in 6 hours than in the previous 6 years. But even as the smoke cleared and the gunfire faded, federal commanders knew one truth: nightfall was only the beginning. If you're still watching, hit like. The next reveal is worse than anything so far. The aftermath of Operation Nightfall sent shockwaves through every corridor of California's government. As federal teams sifted through the servers seized in Malibu and San Bernardino, a darker reality began to take shape, one far more sinister than a simple cartel collaboration. What agents uncovered wasn't just corruption, it was a governor-engineered criminal infrastructure woven directly into the state's operational machinery. At 9:14 a.m., inside the FBI Los Angeles field office, analysts began reconstructing the Solaris command logs extracted from the server farm. The files revealed a level of organization that staggered even veteran agents. Governor Alexander Alex Cortez hadn't been a passive facilitator. He had designed, approved, and enforced the flow of Sinaloa's narcotics pipeline across California. The governor's encrypted directives were precise to the minute, detailing the dates, routes, and personnel needed to guarantee safe passage for cartel shipments. The logs exposed 46 temporary border relaxations authorized from the governor's office, each timed within narrow windows to allow incoming Sinaloa convoys to sail through without scrutiny. These were not clerical coincidences. For every relaxation, a high-value shipment crossed the state line: methamphetamine, cocaine, precursor chemicals, or bulk cash being laundered through state-approved channels. Even more damning was a dossier revealing that 63 California Highway Patrol officers were handpicked for special assignments, only to be quietly paid off by Solaris operatives. Their job was simple: clear the roads, divert traffic, and stall other units whenever cartel convoys traveled. In return, these officers received monthly consultation bonuses ranging from $12,000 to $22,000, money funneled through charities and training programs tied directly to the governor's office. Federal investigators found 19 Border Protection employees who had each accepted upwards of $50,000 per Green Lane event, allowing Sinaloa trucks carrying chemical drums, narco cash, or counterfeit pharmaceuticals to pass unchallenged. Some agents even received prepaid debit cards issued by offshore banks linked to Solaris accounts. The governor's fingerprints were everywhere. Encrypted voice logs captured Cortez discussing supply chain interruptions with a Sinaloa intermediary. Coded language referring to temporary law enforcement raids that threatened the cartel's revenue flow. In one recorded exchange, Cortez authorized the rerouting of medical shipments to a warehouse later identified as a fentanyl tableting plant disguised as a recycling facility. He even used state emergency funds to purchase communication equipment for disaster readiness, equipment that Solaris repurposed to jam radio frequencies during cartel convoys, blinding local patrol units while shipments moved under the cover of silence. Between bribery payments, offshore transfers, and falsified infrastructure projects, Solaris funneled $118.7 million directly into the pockets of Governor Cortez over a 36-month period. The governor had turned California into Sinaloa's most secure operational zone, an empire protected not by violence but by political authority. By noon, the war room fell silent. The evidence wasn't theoretical. It wasn't circumstantial. It was systematic treason, and the realization settled like concrete. To dismantle Solaris, they wouldn't just have to fight the cartel, they would have to topple the man who ruled the state. Operation Nightfall had crippled Solaris on the streets, but the next blow would strike at the very heart of California's law enforcement system. By late afternoon, FBI Director Maxwell Grant authorized the launch of Clean State Division, a classified internal operation protocol reserved only for cases where corruption had penetrated the command structure itself. And according to the Solaris evidence wall, corruption hadn't just penetrated California's law enforcement, it had hollowed it out. The first targets were the precincts whose patrol logs, radio records, and traffic reports aligned too perfectly with cartel convoy routes. At 2:47 p.m., unmarked federal vans slid into parking lots across Los Angeles, Orange County, San Diego, Bakersfield, and Stockton. Doors swung open. Warrants were delivered. Shock rippled through the halls of stations that had once prided themselves on discipline and integrity. In downtown Los Angeles, officers watched in disbelief as 3 senior sergeants, men with decades of commendations, were placed in handcuffs for selling convoy schedules to Solaris. Not bribed once, not tempted occasionally. They had been on monthly payroll, each receiving $10,000 cash envelopes disguised as training stipends, signed off by a state office controlled by Governor Cortez. At the Orange County Sheriff's Office, an entire strategic planning team was suspended after forensic accountants discovered falsified patrol grids designed to accidentally divert officers away from Sinaloa's preferred routes. The logs matched perfectly with 27 of the governor's border relaxations. In San Diego, federal agents stormed the office of a deputy chief who had been leaking the details of incoming raids for over a year. Inside his desk were 5 burner phones, 2 offshore debit cards, and a ledger listing payout amounts for 11 local officers, each name marked with a code corresponding to their role in Solaris operations. When confronted, he simply whispered, "You don't understand who's really in charge." But the corruption ran deeper still. 7 California judges were placed under federal protection as investigations revealed they had reduced sentences for Solaris-linked traffickers in exchange for donations funneled through political committees tied to Cortez's re-election campaign. Some cases had been so blatantly manipulated that prosecutors were stunned they hadn't triggered alarms earlier. In Sacramento, 14 state legislators were quietly moved into investigative detention after encrypted emails uncovered their involvement in approving oversight exemptions for infrastructure expansions that Solaris used as smuggling corridors. Across the state, the emotional toll was catastrophic. Officers who had dedicated their lives to honorable service now stood frozen as colleagues. Friends, mentors, even partners were escorted out in chains. One veteran detective in San Bernardino, who had spent 22 years fighting cartel crime, collapsed into tears as he watched his lieutenant being taken away. "He saved my life once," he whispered. "I never thought he'd betray everything we stood for." By nightfall, 41 officers, 19 federal employees, and 7 high-ranking officials had been arrested. Background checks were reopened statewide. Internal audits spread like wildfire. The message was no longer whispered. It was declared, if Governor Cortez's empire was built inside the badge, then the badge itself would be rebuilt from the ground up. California was not just dismantling Solaris, it was cleansing itself. As the dust from the statewide purge settled, federal analysts finally turned their full attention to what remained of the seized Solaris database. The servers taken from the Malibu Fortress and the San Bernardino warehouse contained the operational heart of Governor Cortez's criminal engine. Years of hidden transactions, encrypted communications, and internal blueprints that revealed the true scale of his ambition. What emerged was bigger than corruption, bigger than California. It was a continental narcotics empire, and California had been engineered to become its crown jewel. At 6:40 p.m., inside a secure vault room at the FBI Los Angeles field office, analysts projected Solaris's master schematic across a 40-foot digital wall. Threads, nodes, and financial conduits connected like a spider web stretching across the entire western United States. In the center, highlighted in red, pulsed a single title, Solaris Corp, Western Distribution Authority. It wasn't a code name, it was a governing command, and Governor Alex Cortez wasn't a participant, he was the director. The logs revealed that over the past 2 years, 82% of all fentanyl flowing into the West Coast passed through Solaris-managed routes. The operation wasn't limited to Los Angeles. It spanned Nevada, where Cortez used a network of trucking contractors tied to Las Vegas nightlife groups. Oregon, where green energy grant programs masked precursor chemical imports. Arizona, where corrupted highway inspection supervisors cleared Sinaloa shipments under the guise of agricultural cargo. A separate folder labeled K-Transit exposed an astonishing truth. Solaris had the infrastructure to move 2.5 tons of narcotics per week without triggering a single automated alert. Shipping manifests had been rewritten at origin points, trucking logs pre-altered before drivers even began their routes, and way stations temporarily shut down under pretext of maintenance precisely when convoys passed. Even more disturbing were the communications between Cortez and Sinaloa's logistics directors. Many messages were disguised as policy memos or state directives. One file, Water Conservation Strategy 14B, was a covert routing plan for smuggling precursor shipments through agricultural zones. Another, labeled Homeless Relief Distribution, detailed how fentanyl tablets could be hidden inside donations sent through non-profit partners run by Solaris proxies. The financial analysis was equally staggering. Over 30 months, Solaris had laundered $1.2 billion through real estate developments in downtown Los Angeles, renewable energy investment funds, and luxury hospitality projects. Each transaction had been split into micro-segments, routed through offshore accounts in Cyprus, Belize, and Malta, then funneled back into California as international investments. But the true horror lay in the final decrypted file, Phase 7, Regional Stabilization. It outlined Cortez's long-term objective to make California the primary Sinaloa distribution and production hub in the United States. Not just a gateway, a permanent headquarters shielded by political legitimacy and infrastructure influence. The realization chilled even the most seasoned investigators. Solaris wasn't just a cartel pipeline, it was a parallel government, one built in shadows, engineered through authority, and protected by the man elected to lead the state. As agents stared at the illuminated map, one truth echoed through the room like a warning. California hadn't merely been infiltrated, it had been redesigned for the cartel's future, and the fight to reclaim it was only beginning. When the final servers were seized and the last convoy stopped, one truth stood above everything else. Power doesn't need violence to destroy a state, only silence. Solaris thrived not because the cartel was unstoppable, but because people in authority chose comfort over duty and ambition over integrity. The fallout ripped through California. Investigations reopened into infrastructure funds, environmental grants, and nonprofit programs that had quietly become cartel pipelines. Entire departments were forced into emergency audits. Public trust shattered as residents realized their own leaders had surrendered the state to a foreign criminal empire. The deeper lesson is brutal. Democracy doesn't collapse in a single moment. It erodes slowly. One bribe, one exemption, one ignored warning at a time. Solaris didn't take over California overnight. It grew in dark corners while good people looked away. And the cost was measured in lives lost to fentanyl, neighborhoods destabilized, and a government rewritten to serve criminals instead of citizens. This is the real danger of political infiltration. If we stay silent, it happens again. So tap like so more people see this story. story. Comment "expose" if you want this corruption brought into the light. Share this video so the truth travels farther than Solaris ever did.